Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig. You can check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. Joining me in these Wild West times we live, Brian Aldridge. What's going on, buddy? Hope all's well.
Hey, everything's going pretty well here. If you want to find me, get me at Boyce and Computer on the X as well. Or
the
if you want
Xiverse.
to check out, get me on the Getter, Truth Social, whatever's up. Getter, did you say that's gone? Getter's gone, I think.
Parler's the one that's gone, I think. Yeah.
Parler's gone. So wherever you can find me, my name or at Boyce Computer.
Just
goes
to show you how active of a social media user you are when you're like, well, I might have an account here. I mean, I might have
I created an account. I not that I look at those ones, but,
sure,
got to support the more conservative ones that fail and flail.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Now
You're
that
not a
Twitter's
member of the
back,
people,
or X is back, or whatever we're going to call it now,
it's X.
Seems
That's what
like
it's
you
called.
actually can, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go talk on X or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds
That's
like
where all
drugs.
that's where all the cool kids are talking. Yeah, a little speed, a little X. Let's start with a quick kind of update. I'm sure folks are kind of exhausted with the Microsoft Activision stuff, but it is so important. Yeah. So just got a couple of quick updates on this. Microsoft essentially told the CMA to go pound sand. CMA
as they should.
Yeah, the CMA is the UK equivalent to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Market or something. I don't know what it stands for, but what their big concern was some of the ancillary products associated with the Activision Blizzard merger, and Microsoft, for all intents and purposes, said, we're not breaking up our company. We're not selling anything off. You can either approve us or not approve us. That's how I read what they essentially said.
Yep.
So that's what they have. That's what they've told the CMA. Take the deal or leave it. We're not negotiating ancillary details. If you want it, great. If you don't want it, that's fine. We're prepared for that too. We'll take our business to the European Union, I guess, if that's the will of this body. So that leaves them to be the last holdout, as we covered last week. End of October is the final deadline for this to go through. And I think the CMA's they've delayed their or they've postponed and delayed their hearings to when, I don't know yet. I don't know that there's a time.
Yeah.
So that is actually, there is a time, August 29th. So 4 weeks from now, they'll have that decision in, and then we shall see what happens.
And they're calling for a public response. So they're getting to get everything off of their plate. They're now saying we're seeking public input about the deal, and then that's what they're going to base it on. So they say, oh well, a lot of people said it's a good idea, so I guess that's what the CMA is going to go with. So, yeah, kind of they gave up on using excuses, because Microsoft, from what I said or saw, indicated that the changes that we have made are enough to answer whatever you may throw at us. We've already made enough changes. There's nothing else that we feel we need to change. And then that lines right up with what you said so tough. You're either going to take it or leave it, and it's going to do nothing but hurt you if you leave it. So
exactly. So I would suspect that decision will be probably sometime in mid to early September would be my hope, if their hearing is on the 20th. I don't know how their body works, if they make decisions the same day or whatnot. So or they might just delay it again, because they really don't want to be the one. It seems like they don't want to make a decision, Brian. I mean, that's what it almost boils down to for me, is they keep delaying and postponing, and now we want to hear from the public, which I'm all for hearing from the public, but this has been this has been almost a 2-year discussion. If you wanted to hear from the public, why the hell are you waiting
Should
until...
have opened it up then, yeah.
Yeah, opened it up then. I mean, you've waited, and they've already postponed it twice, and now you want to leave time for public comment, which you have to. If you're going to allow the public, you have to give them more than 2 days to respond. So pretty disappointing to see, but as we heard last week from Bobby Kotick and from Phil Spencer, the deal's going to go through. So it's just a matter of time. So that's the update. That's what we're following.
All right. Well, let's move on to some other. Since I'm assuming that they're practically together, that they're merged. This will be my other Microsoft news.
Okay.
So Activision supposedly, this is according to Hasbro, who has the rights to the Transformers games, that they used to have a partnership with them. I think that fell apart or expired in 2018, if I remember correctly. And so Hasbro claims that they lost their code. Of course, Hasbro must not have their own code. And so here they are claiming, here's how here's a quote from Hasbro. When a company eats a company that eats a company, things get lost, and that's very frustrating. Okay, so somebody who's upset about the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal, I mean, is this what we're upset about? So they're claiming that they have lost the source code to their Transformers games, and they want to have them back on sale. But they say they can't because the publisher, Microsoft or Activision Blizzard, has lost the source code. And so, this is something where we had to load up games on older platforms because there were some decoration details that they couldn't find, Hasbro said. So Hasbro, it sounds like, didn't keep track of their source code, but they're pointing the fingers at Microsoft, Activision Blizzard, claiming that they have lost the source code. And this is, of course, what GameIndustry.biz reported on here earlier this week. Actually, was it yesterday? Yes, yesterday. Well, there's been an update today. So according to now, all of a sudden, Activision CCO says that these headlines were wrong. They have the code. It was not lost, and it never was. And so Hasbro,
really?
Of course, yeah, the Hasbro didn't even seem to reach out and ask if they had the source code. Seems like they were just making empty statements. So they apologize. Here's from Hasbro. To clarify, comments that suggested Transformers games have been lost were made in error. We apologize to Activision and regret any confusion. They've been great partners, and we look forward to future opportunities to work together.
Well, hold on.
Sounds like...
Hold on. This is the quote. When a company eats a company that eats a company, things get lost, and that's very frustrating. In their quote, things get lost. They absolutely said that they lost it. And now they're saying that they didn't say that they didn't lose it?
They're saying Activision Blizzard is saying that they didn't lose it. Hasbro made that claim.
But Hasbro is now saying in their claim, their restatement, that that's not what they said, right? Isn't that what you just read?
Yeah, they're saying it was the statement was made in error.
It wasn't made in error. They said that they lost the source code. That's not an error.
It was a false statement. It was an accusation.
Yes. That's not.
And now they're really kissing butt. I mean, it sounds like they're saying, please let us have our source code back. We lost part of it. We can't release our game with everything in it. Please, you're a great partner. We love you.
You talk about creating a public pissing match. I mean,
I know.
Why would you go after? Why would you publicly state something like that when it's obviously false? Yeah. And what now? I will say this. Okay, let me play devil's advocate here. So let's say you're flying on an airline and your flight gets delayed or canceled. You go to the gate and you're not getting the help you need. You then go on Twitter and bash the airline. You might get a response. Most of the time you do get a response. That's actually become a very useful way of dealing with customer service, especially if you have a decent-sized Twitter following. So maybe that's what was going on here, because there is another quote from Hasbro in the original one that says, quote, "We had to load up games on an older platform because there was some decode details we couldn't find, as you already read. Activision kept sending us concept art instead, which we didn't want. So we booted up an old computer and ripped them all from there." So it could be possible, Brian, that Activision just wasn't being super helpful with some of the details. Yeah. So maybe they put them on blast publicly, and now maybe they'll get what they want. I'm gonna admit that's a possibility.
Or perhaps they weren't asking for the source code, and they were like, "Well, we need this art asset. We need this art asset." So they're trying to find in all the emails and communications that go back and forth, looking for a specific piece of art, rather than saying, "Can you just give us our code so that we can rebuild the process?" I bet you they weren't asking the right question, because
possibly
the fact that they were sending them concept art back was probably them responding with emails saying, "Well, here's an email with this art in it. Here's an email with this art in it," rather than saying, "We need the original code so that we can rebuild the game," which is different than individual art files, because they had they had all of the code in a repo somewhere.
it seems odd to me as large of a company, like in terms of Hasbro is a massive company. Like they're huge. And the idea that somebody from Hasbro couldn't get through to somebody at Activision Blizzard and ask that question does seem a little bit odd. But it is also possible that with everything going on with the Activision Blizzard merger and everything else, that they were just kind of slow to respond. And so maybe Hasbro just put them on blast publicly. I think there's two possible explanations there. It just seems odd to do the latter, to put them on blast publicly like that.
Yeah, and here's another quote. Sadly, apparently Activision's not sure what hard drives they're on in their building, said the spokesperson. When a company, and this is that original quote. Here's more of it. Sadly, in the building, when a company eats a company that eats a company, things get lost, and that's very frustrating. Hope is that now that the deal is moving forward with Microsoft and Xbox, that they'll go through all of the archives and every hard drive to find it all, because it's an easy peasy Game Pass ad. We want those games back up for people to have a chance to play. So, I mean, it was really, you think that they're storing them on hard drives in a closet somewhere? I mean, they're stacking hard drives of old code somewhere? I do that kind of stuff.
They're putting them in shopping carts and wheeling them across the parking lot and destroying all their data. Who's that, Yahoo?
These things are backed up in data centers and archived. I mean, the way that he's saying it, just showing that they're just frustrated and they're just saying whatever to a reporter.
You know, it seems like the more and more that you read, maybe it is actually the latter, Brian, that they just were not getting a sufficient timely response from Activision. So, like, screw it. Let's just blast them publicly and then we'll get what we want. Maybe that's what this was.
Yeah, because they probably said, well, we have to go look through our archive and find it, which to them was, we have to go search hard drives. We have to go plug in hard drives into a dock and we'll figure out where we stuck it. No, that's not how that works. They're not sitting on a hard drive somewhere like that.
Yeah, I doubt it. It would seem very unlikely that a company this size, and these are recent games. We're not talking about an Activision game, the original Activision from the 80s with some weird source code. These games were relatively new. These were Xbox 360 games, so they're not stored on tape. They were undoubtedly stored in a digital format. So that's pretty interesting. Like a little bit of back and forth. I like that.
A little of drama in the tech world. Well, I have some news, and this is something I know that you used to have stock here, and we've talked a lot about them. But the CFO has quit from GameStop. This is something that happened here. That they're going to be resigning on August 11th, and this is going to be the second high-profile exit in 2 months from the company. So makes me kind of wonder, what is happening over there? Are they restructuring? Is it going a different direction and these people didn't like it? Or do they see that it's just a sinking ship that's not going to be able to stay afloat? Because that's very possible. GameStop's really struggling to find relevance in a new time when people just aren't going and getting physical discs. New consoles are going to not have CD slots, DVD slots anymore. Everything's going to be digital. And so for them, they tried to sell things. Yeah, there you go. You can see how their stock's been doing since mid-2021.
Yeah, you had its peaks at 80 and 60 and 62.
But look at before that. I mean, that was that.
This is when I bought. At like $3 or $4, yeah, and then sold at this second peak around 60.
But I think that was a highly unnatural. That was from all the meme.
This was
stock buys,
idiots on Reddit. Yeah, this was
so it's really just going back to more of a normal value.
It's still not a normal
look where it's
value.
At in 2019.
This stock should not be trading at 21, almost 21 and a half. Ford's stock, now they are losing about $4.5 billion a year on their electric vehicle department. However, Ford's stock is at $13 a share. AT&T's stock is at like $11 a share. GameStop is not worth $21.30 a share. This is a $1 or $2 stock at the best. This, you bring up the point. Oh, thanks, CNBC. You bring up the point. This is a company that is a brick and mortar business selling something, a product, video games that are becoming more exclusively digital. I don't know the last time that I bought a disc for a game. It might have been Red Dead 2.
I think that was the same for me. I think that's when I last time I went and bought it.
Yeah, I think it might be Red Dead 2.
And I went to GameStop and picked it up.
So did I.
That works, but now with preloading, you don't really need to.
Yeah.
Xbox has it all set up. PlayStation has it all set up to where you can preload. They can lock it down till a certain time. Because it used to be with World of Warcraft, you would have to be delivered the disc, and so you'd be like the day that the game would be released, you'd be sitting there and hoping that they'd somehow accidentally deliver it early, or you'd have it delivered to a GameStop and you'd go pick it up. That's just stuff that doesn't happen anymore. But he does digital downloads, so at midnight you can start playing the game if you want to, or whenever they lift the gates. So I just think that that's something that's this company's going to have to figure out how to stay relevant in the way that, we've talked about a couple of different ways. They've done some prototypes of different ways. I don't know which way is going to be successful. That's a really tough business to be in. And I don't know what people are going to actually show up for or pay money. Unless it turns into a microbrewery.
You son of a bitch. That is exactly. So I was going to say, get to these states and get your liquor licenses and turn it into a hangout. Now, I think a couple years ago, and we did say this, I couldn't tell you what episode we talked about it on, but you could, there was the conversations of turning GameStops into kind of hangout spots. They did the one store, I believe it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they brought in a bunch of CRTs and N64s and old consoles and made it more of a casual hangout spot. But the reality is, Brian, there's a couple of places that have opened here, and I'm sure there's some similar ones in Idaho, of these bars that are opening that have this stuff too. Like, they've got these setups. Now, it's not as extensive or expansive as what a GameStop might have, but they'll have an N64, a PS2, a couple of just consoles, some SNESs, whatever it might be. The NES Classics, the SNES Classics modded with 6 trillion games. So, I mean, that is happening at these other places. And these are places, I was in a place a couple weeks ago. They had a bunch of pool tables, skee ball, all that, just a couple of little games. It wasn't an arcade, but a couple little things, pool tables and things, a shuffleboard, things like that. Or not the shuffleboard, the one where you throw it on the tabletop. I don't know what that one's called.
I don't remember what it is, but
and then they had like 4 flat screen TVs on the back wall, and in front of all of them there was an N64, a PS2, and then an NES and SNES Classic.
Yep.
And it was people were just hanging out. Just I walked up there with my buddies. We picked whatever fighting game was on the SNES, and we played it for like 10 minutes, and it was cool.
And that's
while we wait for a pool table to open up.
Get some sort of a pass system, or something where people can have drinks if they have a pass that they purchase.
Sure,
they get discounts on beers, wine, whatever it is. They can sit at one of the places and play whatever console video game they want to of a classic video games. And let's let people kind of make it a hangout spot where you got some music going, or, you have something going to keep the flow. I think that would be a lot more successful. And you're got to get away from trying to market to kids unless you're going to be selling trinkets. And right now that's where they're kind of going, is marketing to kids.
Yeah.
And now, trinkets and those little characters.
There's another alternative, because the reality of taking your brick and mortar business and getting alcohol and liquor licenses in all of these different states, a huge overhead. The other opportunity, which I could see, is GameStop going into breweries, microbreweries, bars, and restaurants with a service. We are selling you a service where we will bring in these things. Exactly. We will handle this stuff. And you put your logo on it. Everybody knows what GameStop is. It's a very iconic logo.
It's a GameStop. It's a place where you go and play some games.
But everybody knows the logo. It's very recognizable. So you put these in some of these places, and that's maybe an opportunity to supplement your business. Because what they're doing now, in the longevity of what they're doing now, is not seemingally feasible.
They're going to keep dwindling, and that's the problem.
Which is, Brian, might be fine. I mean, the reality is brick and mortar is traditional brick and mortar, not all brick and mortar. Traditional brick and mortar is a dying breed. There's still plenty of successful brick and mortar and plenty of places that are opening. I mean, here we're in a growing area. I know over there in Boise, it's a huge popping off area. There's plenty of stores opening. Brick and mortar is not dead, but brick and mortar for now almost exclusively digital products is dead. There is no need for these stores, especially when you have big boxes like Best Buy, which has made a huge push on gaming in recent years. Walmart and Target have huge video game selections if you want to purchase physical media. And there's other regional stores that have similar things as well. So there's just not a place for them anymore. I mean, realistically. Yeah. So license the name and do something cool with it. Keep the name alive. It's a nostalgic name and it will have a nostalgic kick for people. But you got to do something with it, because operating these little hole in the walls and strip malls is just not the key to the 21st century.
And I've heard a lot of complaints from people that have worked there or work there on the pay, and
it's terrible.
It's not a great place to work. There's not really any place that you're going to go up in the company. It's kind of they just need you to show up and open the door and greet people when they come in. And so I think that it's not really a place that's easy to get people to work at because of the low pay, especially when people are making so much on welfare that how can they compete with that type of a price with how much they're actually bringing in?
Yeah, so. It's funny. I looked at looking at this logo again. I'm just a second taking. I forgot their big purchase of ThinkGeek. That was going to be their thing. ThinkGeek was an online retailer of kind of tech nerd stuff.
And things like that?
Yeah, it was just all kind of like gamer stuff. The GameStop bought it thinking that they could turn trinkets into a successful business strategy, and it's just overpriced junk. Which, don't get me wrong, I mean, you go watch YouTubers and Twitch streamers, they have crap littered all behind. I mean, so do I, if I'm being honest. Yeah. I mean, the stuff behind me is not trinkets. It's a oscilloscope and a power supply and soldering equipment. But it's people do still buy that stuff. But at what cost? I mean, are you really going to drive to the town square, for lack of a better term, or your outdoor shopping complex to purchase a Funko Pop, or you're just going to buy it on Amazon?
I think it'll almost be better, rather than those little trinkets, is going maybe just with clothing that is licensed that's unique to a GameStop. You can't go and buy them at Walmart, but really cool designs. But I'm saying that be a majority of what you're doing, rather than the what are they, Funko Pops, you said?
But okay, Funko Pops is a bad example, but they do. All of the ThinkGeek stuff is exclusive at GameStop. But are you really going to go in there, Brian? You've got how many boys? And I mean, you'll go in there, and if you want to get
way over normal prices, yeah.
Well, you're going to pay way over, and you're going to have to get all. You're going to go in there and drop $250 on a bunch of garbage. And that's going to be that. I mean, that's the reality of it. $45 figurines. And it's just, I don't know. I just don't. When they bought ThinkGeek, it was already too late for that. And that was probably like 2010 when they did that. And it's now just continuing. So it sucks. I have fond memories of freezing my rear end off in strip mall parking lots, waiting for a GameStop to open up at midnight to get the new Xbox, to get the Halos, to get Call of Duty. Very fond memories of me and my high school buddies doing that. But you just don't do it anymore. It's just different. It just doesn't exist. So it sucks, but it's on them. I mean, this has been years in the making, and I haven't seen anything indicating that they're making any substantial changes besides closing stores and selling more tchotchke garbage.
Well, and that's and I think that's a sign of the times. Let's continue. Let's talk about the economy a little bit.
Sure.
A studio here is going to be releasing some new titles here very soon. CD Projekt Red, they're switching over to Unreal on all their new projects, but they're going to be laying off 9% of their developers' workforce. And this has been made redundant, and they're going to be so these are redundant people. Part of it is because there's a project that they ended up not doing. I bet you that there's people that, since they're not using their own in-house engine anymore, that they don't need.
Sure.
So they're going to be letting go 100 people between now and March of 2024. So this is something I think that we've shown over and over again, week by week, of just the economy and the video game market slowing down. This is really apparent in also the hardware market, that these companies are having to cut back. And the sad part about that is, now here I think they made some good decisions because of seeing that happen, of switching to Unreal Engine. I think it's going to help them in the long run, save them money. But for a lot of these companies, they can't, just doing something like that isn't going to be enough to save their bottom line.
Sure.
They've got, these companies are cutting back, not making games that they were going to make. They're cutting down the scope of what those games were going to be. And sadly, this economy is affecting the type of game and the quality of game that we end up getting. And that's the sad part for me, that makes me frustrated because I don't want these. I like having big, cool games. Now, I don't think that that's going to affect the upcoming games that you're going to see from this company because, as I said, I think with them switching to Unreal Engine, they've saved a huge amount of money. I think it's given them a huge amount of tech. Epic is working with them on all of that open world stuff that we talk that you see in the new Unreal Engine 5.3, 5.2. This is for them. Epic's been putting them in Unreal Engine for CD Projekt Red because they're using them as their project to test the big open world tech of Unreal Engine. And so they're being smarter, and that's, I guess, the good part of tightening the waistband a little bit is they're being smarter with their money, quit being like, oh, we're just going to make everything kind of like what Rockstar loves to do.
Sure.
Realizing that, hey, here's a way that we could save a ton of money and have a better product. Normally we wouldn't do it, but let's do it. And I think it's going to help because, as you saw with Cyberpunk, they got a big black eye from not doing everything how they should have, and it really killed their product name quite a bit. Their brand of CD Projekt Red.
Oh man, it murdered them. I mean, it was it was terrible.
Because everybody thought of them as a certain way when it came to all their Witcher series and just games that they put out in the past. They're always known for quality, looks really good. Then they came out with that, and it didn't look any better than their old games they'd put out years and years and years before. And so I think, and plus them not having put out a game for so long, that was their downfall. They weren't daily working on all these things to improve them like Unreal does with their engine. And it really showed when they released a product. So this is something that they're doing, as I said, redundant. They're claiming that none of these are things that are going to take away from anything. These are ones that they just don't need anymore. And of course, they're saying that they're going to, one of them earlier, they had laid off that whole Gwent team. That was that team that was doing the card game.
Yeah,
that they ended up kind of, I think, canceling or whatever had happened with that.
I think, didn't it come out, or maybe it never
came out, but I think they shut it down, if I remember correctly. I don't think I beta tested it for them, and I think it wasn't that successful because people are just kind of backing away from card games. They weren't as hot as they once were, and so they laid off that whole team. So this one, though, they don't really say specifically, I don't think here, but I think it has a lot to do with them no longer housing their own engine and having to work on that on a regular basis.
I will say this: you always, Brian, I'm such a ray of positivity and sunshine. You often look for silver linings in things, and it's possible that Cyberpunk wasn't a disaster, but it was very lackluster, very lackluster.
Not what I expected.
No, well, not what they portrayed. It seems to me it is possible that the lackluster release of Cyberpunk and the issues associated with Cyberpunk maybe push that transition up a generation or two. Yep. It seems that might have been the nail in the coffin. Like, okay, all right, this is obviously not going to work going forward. We have got to make a change. Yep. So maybe maybe we'll get better games in the future. I don't know. I mean, I wish Cyberpunk was all it was when it launched, but it wasn't, and hopefully they can learn from it. I mean, that's all you can ask.
Well, they're getting ready to release those new, what are DLCs or whatever they are. I don't remember how they're indicating them.
Yeah.
But those ones are under
DLCs.
Unreal Engine 5. So I'm kind of excited to see that Cyberpunk world in Unreal Engine 5 and see how well it works. So that'll be happening here pretty soon. I don't remember the exact dates, but in the coming months, we're going to have one of those come out. And so we'll finally get to see what it looks like not on their engine.
Excellent.
So here's another thing I want to talk about, the economy. Intel's going to be raising the prices of their CPUs. So they're saying they're having a major restructure. So it's going to be having a price hike and to finance new Team Blue manufacturing plants in Germany and a company-wide restructure. I wonder how much of this is linked to possibly that CHIPS Act and the fact that they cannot make things in China anymore. Maybe that has to do with it. They have to make a bunch of these things either in the United States or other countries, I assume friendly countries. So they're going to be they're going to be raising the price. This is after I think AMD did their report today, and they I think surpassed expectations.
Oh, the earnings report.
Yeah,
See
I
if can
started looking
find
into
that.
it. There were, I should have put it in here. I did look at it. But, they surpassed, from what I understand, the expectations of what they were going to do. And I think that they've been kind of beating Intel when it comes to chips because their prices are better and their performance currently is doing very well compared to the Intel chips. So this is something. It'd be interesting
Yeah.
to see how this affects having the prices even higher for Intel, how it's going to affect their sales.
So for the June quarter, which just ended, AMD reported, for the June quarter, they reported second quarter adjusted earnings of 58 cents a share per share. Wall Street was expecting 57, so that came in above that. Revenue came in at $5.63 billion for that period, which was above the analyst expectation of 5.30. So up there. Chipmaker data center unit revenue was down 11% from a year earlier in the June quarter, while revenue in its client PC business fell 54% versus the prior year. AMD's gaming business declined 4% in the same period. Overall revenue was down 18% year over year. You might think, oh my God, that's a disaster. That's just the current state of the economy. Every company is reporting lower earnings. Even my company just got, our earnings report was last week and it was just atrocious. And that's just the status of what's going on. But the fact that they had a higher generated revenue generated more revenue than they were expected to do is a pretty good sign. They talk about AI, which is the thing that NVIDIA's really, I'm not an NVIDIA fan, obviously, but boy, their AI stuff that they're doing with those AI chips is really going to set them apart because they're really the only game in town that's doing those kinds of chips at those levels.
Yeah, and I think that this is going to be something where if the hardware market starts to come back, that's going to be really strong for them. But I think they're doing well for how few pieces of hardware are selling in the United States. And not just AMD hardware across the board is down because people don't have the excess money. I upgraded mine, but I waited a long time. I waited till the prices dropped before I purchased. And I think a lot of people just don't have that discretionary income at the moment to be tossing out for crazy priced GPUs, CPUs, and everything else that goes along with those. So it'll be interesting to see if this starts to recover. We've got an election coming up that seems to always sway things quite a bit. Be interesting to see if this starts to kind of rebound and we get it to where these companies aren't struggling so much because it's been kind of a uniform for every single company, whether it's software, hardware, anything in the tech industry has been struggling and downsizing and hurting. So I'm just kind of surprised when they say they're going to be raising their chip prices at a time like this when people are not buying hardware. So, all right. Well, hey, so you want to go to some politics or you want to talk about AI?
Let's talk about AI. We've done a lot of politics and stuff the last couple of weeks. Let's turn it over to AI. What's going on there?
All right. Well, there's been a lot of talk about how AI is going to be impacting the gaming industry. This is something that I think has impacted a lot of industries, but I think when it comes to being able to generate content, change how games work with, let's say, NPCs, interactions, you can have it to where you don't have to necessarily create a lot of content in the game. If you can get smart enough AI, it can generate content on the fly and never have the same game twice. Create constraints and rules. So, but this is something that these studios, companies are really trying to figure out right now. And I think that they're still trying to figure out, well, they talk about here, immersive game experiences. That's where I think AI will help the most. Of course, you're going to have a lot of bugs and things early on and crazy experiences. I hate that sometimes that's the fun of it. But I think, having an AI integrated into a game is going to make it to where you have the ability to have something that feels unique to you. And that's what, you talked about Red Dead Redemption. That's what I love so much about that is it kind of felt unique to me, even though everybody else got the exact same experience.
There's always this thing. I remember this was supposed to be a big thing in Cyberpunk, and it never really happened. In GTA, you have your house, your pad, or whatever it's called, your hideout, your spot, whatever it is. That seems to me that could be an early barrier or an early entry point for some of this stuff, where you truly could say, with a text prompt or a voice prompt or something, I want my place to look like X, Y, and Z with A, B, C, D in it, and boom, it's generated.
I want a fountain in my living room, right?
Yeah, just stuff like I mean, honestly, kind of like The Sims. I mean, that was like always the cool thing with The Sims is like any in-game asset you could just dump in the middle of your house if you wanted to, as long as there was room for it, even if it would piss the people off in there. Maybe that's an entry point for this immersive experience. It's going to be impossible to do this on a multiplayer standpoint in terms of everybody's world looking different, but you could isolate it in a multiplayer game like Grand Theft Auto. The AI generated stuff is segmented in people's private hideouts or locations or houses or apartments or whatever it is. That to me is the first step of this immersive stuff. Now, eventually you get, and I don't really understand the concept, and I've heard this a lot. Oh, I want an AI generated game. I want to say, I want to play a game where I'm chasing a tornado and the game AI generates it. That's not enough detail to generate a game.
Yeah.
That's not even a thing.
You're going to get a lot of odd results doing that.
But it's not even an odd result. You'll get so I'm just driving in a car and I'm driving around and there's a tornado. That's going to be it, because that's what I told it to do. Right? That's a video game is the thing that makes video games so great are in my opinion, the minutia and the minute details. That's what makes games like that so much fun. Like Grand Theft Auto, like GTA, like or same thing, like Red Dead, like Cyberpunk. It's what makes these with the Witcher games. It's that open world, Skyrim, that stuff that makes it really, really pop and fun. You're not going to get that, I don't think, at least not with what I've seen, by telling your AI, I want to be a dragon slayer. Put me somewhere in Ireland in the 1600s or whatever with dragons. I just don't think that. Well, I don't think that's not a thing yet.
I think what's going to be more likely to make the game feel more real is when you have AI for the shopkeeper. You walk into a store. Yeah. Just think of Grand Theft Auto, and when you walk into a shop, and it'll be just like Trader Jane. When you walk into a shop, and right now they're kind of doing a static thing. They're doing a set round of what they're doing. They have a couple things that they say. Have it to be where that is totally dynamic. Where if you go in there and you pull a gun on them, they respond in a unique way. Or if you go in there and talk to them, they'll respond in a way that seems more human. I mean, because eventually it's going to get to the point where you're not typing in and clicking, you're talking. They're going to have a mic, and when you walk up to the counter, you say, hey, what's up? I want to buy one of these. And they'll say, hey, we don't have any of those in stock, or we don't carry those. I heard if you go down to this place, the store down the road, they probably carry that. Have it be more of a normal conversation where you don't have a set prompt, and they're realizing based off of what you're asking, just like if you went into a store and you asked for something that didn't make any sense, it would realize that what you're asking for doesn't make sense. And they'll say, dude, I have no idea. Are you all right? I have no idea what you're talking about. I think having that natural of a response or a response to your actions is what's going to make a game feel cooler. When you're walking down the street, people responding to you in a more natural way, other than when you bump them in Grand Theft Auto and they, kind of give a rude remark back to you because you bumped them.
So I don't know what game it was, but there was a Command and Conquer game on the Xbox 360 that you could, I think it was Command and Conquer, where you would play the game with voice prompts, or you could play the game with voice prompts. This would have been like probably 2007, 8, 10, something like that. It had to have been earlier than 10, where you could play this game with voice commands. Now, obviously, what you're describing is very different, but I always thought that concept was kind of interesting. You'd put on the little old Xbox headset, it was the one earpiece with the microphone, and you would give the Command and Conquer game commands as to what you wanted to do. And I always thought that was very interesting. And now you take a look at the devices like the HTC Vive, the Valve Index, Apple's Vision Pro. All of these things have microphones built into them. So that is very easily done. I've been playing still a lot of Xbox the last couple of weeks as I've been going through and playing the old Call of Duty catalog. And the way I've been talking on Xbox is by connecting my AirPods on my iPhone and using the Xbox app to join an Xbox Live party. And that's the way I've been talking with my friends. Not through Discord, but through the Xbox Live party system. So there's no reason that I couldn't do that with the Xbox in a game.
Yeah.
It's
got
access
Tom
to
Clancy's
it.
End War? Is that what you're talking about? That was an RTS.
Yeah, maybe it was End War. It was a red
You
cover.
could use voice commands to control the armies and and spread them across.
What was it called?
the
Tom
zone.
Clancy's what?
Tom Clancy's End War. That's the one I'm seeing that has to do with the voice commands. Not really.
Yes, that was it. Yeah, with
Conquer.
the red,
Okay.
the Paris thing, and it was. I remember my grandfather had it, and I was like, oh, this is interesting that you can control this thing with a headset. I don't know how it worked. When did this? The game came out in 2011. So yeah, I don't remember if it was any good or not. But I just thought that the concept was very neat. And then since then, like, I don't know of any other game that has ever done that. Like,
and
just
that's true. And there's been ones where you could get an add-on. I mean, Elite Dangerous, you could get an add-on, and it would really just be sending commands when you give it pre-made commands. But I think getting to where it's a more natural talking, that's going to be where people really go like, "Whoa, this is cool," because this is how it was when you see movies that are showing the future and they talk about they showed how you interact with a computer. Well, the thing that was unique about those is you're more interacting in a natural talking style with the computer. And up to this point, that's not been something that's been possible.
Yeah, I don't know what this is.
No way.
This is some gameplay from this game. I'm curious what it sounds like. Let me see. Let's see if there's any voice commands in here.
Unit 2, move to Fox.
Unit 2.
2, move to Fox.
That's interesting.
Unit 1, attack hostile 3.
Yeah.
1, attack hostile 3.
Huh. So I mean, it's kind of, it wasn't obviously it was not, it was anything but AI, but it was a prompt system based on voice. And again, 2011, Siri didn't exist. Amazon A-Word didn't exist. Google Home didn't exist. I mean, you were talking about very rudimentary voice stuff at that. I think that would be a really cool thing. And again, these VR headsets, the company that's probably going to do this, Brian, is going to be Apple with the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, well, first of all, the thing's going to cost a fortune. It's like $3,200.
They usually are the ones that kind of bring in something new and people accept it, and then other companies start to make them.
Yeah, and I'm sure I haven't tried it. I don't use my Vive as often as I should. No, I have the Meta, the Facebook one. Which one is that?
Yeah.
Oculus. I have an Oculus Rift. Not a Vive. But I'm sure there's something on there with voice commands. I've never tried to play around with it.
Well, in some of these studios, they're offering things like $7,000 bounties to their employees for AI ideas. So if it's an AI idea that they come up with that ends up somehow making it to a certain stage, they'll give them a bounty for that. And I think that's a great idea because right now people are still trying to come up with, well, what do we do with it? And I'm sure there's a lot of good ideas out there of what you could do. And I think this is something that is really going to lead to some company coming up with something unique that hasn't been done yet, and then everybody being like, "Oh yeah, that's really good," and then you'll see a million games like that. But you want to be, these guys want to be the first ones into that. So part of this will be, I think, content, quests, dialogue. Part of it will be world generation to a point. There are limitations, as you said, you can't just say to a game, "Make this." But I think maybe coming up with the layout so that the pathing for going through, certain levels isn't always the same, and they can make it still look high quality without it being exactly the same every time. I think we're going to just start seeing those type of improvements in the industry and make it to where it's just a lot more fun. And I remember when I first got the Fire TV. And they had games that you could play on there, and they had some unique things you could play on a phone and paired with it. There's little gimmicks like that. That's not really what I'm talking about. Those are things you play for a little bit, and you're like, okay, well, sure. But I think having it to where these are things that will allow players to continuously play. I mean, just look at some of the games that people have played for years and years and years, like Skyrim. People are still finding unique and weird things in there just because of how they programmed it. But if you had a game that was always throwing in new things, people would continue to play that game for years and years and years, as long as the things didn't become repetitive and stale. And I think if you did your AI right, that shouldn't happen. If you're somehow updating the models, whatever it's pulling from, I think that's where we're going to start seeing unique games come out that have that replayability, and that way that they can continue letting the game sell because people will continue to play it. It doesn't have to be a new story.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
So, all right. So one thing I wanted to say really quick is there's been some pushback with certain companies. For instance, Assassin's Creed, they did some AI manipulation of their voice actors where it's making the actors concerned. Now, I don't really care. I mean, I think that's their right. If they write it into a contract that they can go through and manipulate their voice, what is that to the actor? The actors are more concerned because they're worried about losing their jobs. AI is something that can come in and replace them.
Have you watched episode 1 of Black Mirror yet?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we watched that.
That's kind of what these guys are afraid of.
Yeah, there's no longer actors. You're licensing maybe people for famous people, but then you can create people that don't even exist. I mean, I've read articles where they're talking about how there's people on the internet, these cam girls that aren't even real. They're generating the people they're generating images and sending the racy photos for girls that don't even exist, and guys are going right along with it. I think in this world, the Actors Guild and whatever guilds they have for voice actors, this is something that you're really at risk of losing your jobs. Now, every industry has a risk with AI and with advancements in technology of losing their jobs, but I don't think that they really can. You can be a person who they use your voice to train. Just make sure if you have a unique enough voice that's worth paying for, that you get a good enough amount of contract money for training the voice model.
I was playing around with a voice AI where it was having me read prompts, and it was AI. It was reading myself back to me, and I got a little spooked. I'm going to be honest. It was reading stuff back to me, and I was like, oh boy. But here's the problem with voice acting AI. And again, for folks that are brand new to the program, I'm sure, we're getting thousands of new listeners every week. I work in, conservative talk is my job. I get paid to speak my mind and be a jackass for 3 hours a day. That's essentially what I do. That's hard to replace with AI because it's dynamic. It's always changing. Yep. Voice acting, on the other hand, writing a script's a lot easier to do with AI. That's a lot more feasible because you've got set guardrails, you've got set boundaries. Yep. You say generate me a script that does this. You can review it before
it goes on the air.
So yeah, precisely. No, but there are, for music stations, there is AI DJs that companies are selling as a service, and there are stations that are using this AI DJ. Now, the thing is they're not firing DJs and putting AI, and what they're doing is taking stations that were nothing more than, just desktops playing music all the time, jukeboxes, and jumping that AI voice in there because it's cheaper than paying a person to do it. So this is something that's very at heart with me because it could potentially affect me,
your industry,
for sure. And here's the thing, I can sit here and I can bitch and complain about it like these guys in the video game industry are doing. It's not going to change it. So you can either get in front of it, figure out how to make yourself useful in the changing times. Brian, I will come back to this again as I do every single time. When Gutenberg invented the printing press, he put all of the handwriters out of business, and it was the end of the world that Gutenberg had made a printing press, and that they weren't going to have to. This idea of mass manufacturing literature, books, Bibles was the first thing that they did. It was a crazy idea. And mass outrage. No, well, what about scriptwriters? There's nobody write penmanship. All that stuff is just going to be out the window. We survived. I mean, we made it. Like, society still existed. Populations continued to grow. Same thing with, again, the iPhone, the payphones, the cell phones. It's all these things. They always change and adapt. And you can either be ahead of the curve and part of this new thing, whatever it might be, or you can get left in the dust. And unfortunately, in our current society, 2023, we've got a bunch of wimps, losers, and cowards that are in our society. They're going to get left in the dust because they don't care to try to be a part of any sort of innovation. They don't want to come up with a solution. They just want to complain about it. And I'm not going to let it happen to me. I mean, it might end. Here's the thing. It's not guaranteed. It might happen to me anyway. I have no idea. But I'm just not going to sit here and go, well, shucks, Brian, AI bad. I'm going to go I'm going to get a sign that says AI with a red line through it and hold it up at a protest. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. But this is a concern. And right now there's still this, I'm sure I know you're very distraught about this. The Screen Actors Guild, all your late night television shows that I know you consume every night or have not been on in months. And I know that's really affecting you and your marriage and everything. And I hope it gets better. But, those guys haven't been at work in 3-4 months now or something like that. Yeah. And it's over the same issues, but it's about AI and royalties. Because the way in which they used to pay people for DVDs, VHSs, and buying things on iTunes, which was the largest online video marketplace, has changed. So they're figuring out, how do we do this with royalties? It was the same thing with Spotify, with Amazon Music, with Apple TV or Apple Music Plus, whatever it's called. So all these various things. I find it fascinating. I really do. I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that comes of it. Will there be some people that are left in the dust? Absolutely, Brian, just like there is in every other part of history. I mean, the Henry Ford with the production line and the manufacturing facility completely changed how we produce products. And it undoubtedly changed the course of history in regards to how things were produced. Without his idea, things would have been done by hand.
Are much harder to find, right?
Yeah, they absolutely are.
Look at the advancements we've made since then.
Yes. So
that's exactly where we're at.
It's just a change in society. You can either be part of the game or you can just be on the sideline in the fetal position. And we unfortunately have too many people that are content being in the fetal position and blaming everybody else for their woes. I mean, it sucks, I'm sure. I mean, if somebody came into you today, Brian, and said, hey, Brian, I know you got a wife and kids and family to support, but Jeff over here, our new AI, is going to be doing your job. That would burn. I mean, if my boss said that to me tomorrow, I'd probably go postal. But you've got to be playing the process on it. That was a joke, by the way, for the record. Yeah, that was a joke.
Well, one thing, there's a group at MIT who put out what they call photo guard. Because this is one of those things where people are doing deep fakes. They're editing images. And so they're putting out what they call photo guard that's supposed to protect your images from malicious AI edits.
Yeah, that's great.
What this does is it introduces nearly invisible perturbations to throw off algorithmic models. This is something that, who knows, I'm sure that they'll come up with something to counter this, but it's supposed to make it so you can tell if something's been edited. So
it looks like what they're doing is putting baking things into the image that if it's manipulated, you'll be able to tell, like almost think about it like the pen that they use to check, or a marker if they use to check if it's a real bill or not, something like that. Yep. Yeah, maybe like that. That's interesting.
And this isn't for this, pictures, but they're going to have to do the same thing with videos. They're going to have to do the same thing with voice somehow. This is going to be a big problem, because especially now when people believe everything that comes across CNN, and CNN doesn't do any more fact checking, they put it right on the air. I think that this is something that's going to be a bigger and bigger problem. In every election cycle, you're going to see all these fake videos, fake pictures, people getting outraged. And it sucks, because these type of things do affect how people vote, do affect how people think. And there's a lot of people who don't understand technology enough to know that that this needs to be protected again.
Yeah. Huh.
So, yeah, I just think that... Does it look like it actually works? I mean,
well, it is, because it's keeping the frame around it so you can tell that that's what it's doing. That's the immunize thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
they're gonna have to do this in a lot of different areas, not just photos.
Yes, and and here's the craziest thing about it: as much new AI stuff as there is, there will be anti-AI AI stuff like this that will be designed. There is already. You can go on Google and search.
Detecting whether an image is real or not.
Yeah, you can do it right now there's things where you can do like, was this text generated by AI, which I'm sure they're using in colleges and stuff like that. And is it perfect every time? No, but it will give you a pretty general idea whether this text, based on how it reads and the way that it's laid out, if this was generated by a human or not. Is it always right? No, but it's
Okay,
using AI
let's talk
to do
about
that.
that really quick.
Sure. What you got?
OpenAI had a tool that they created that was supposed to do that. It was supposed to detect whether something was AI written, but it had such a low accuracy that they had to shut down the tool. I mean, it was really off. And it was detecting that people that weren't native English speakers or people that had autism, it was saying that they were AI just because of the way that they wrote sentences or way that they phrased things. And so this is something that they're finding is much harder to do than they originally thought, to do accurately without a bunch of false positives. And so with text, these schools, there were people that were kicked out of schools that were failed in classes because these tests were inaccurate and claimed that they had written what they made with AI. And so the teachers or the school failed them. And so this is a problem because there's a lot of kids I assume there's a lot of kids that are using AI to help write papers because you can write something that sounds a lot smarter than what you can come up with minimal prompts and knowing very little about what you're trying to write a paper about.
Which, it is an issue. When I was in high school, the big thing was Wolfram Alpha, which, if you remember, was Apple's, the early Siri. It was all of its stuff was based on Wolfram Alpha. Big computing thing. And I was in high school, and we used Wolfram Alpha for math because it was an incredibly complex math calculator, unlike what you would find just on any sort of regular equation, just any sort of regular, even scientific calculator that you could put on your computer. And it was very, very good at that stuff. But I will say this, and I'm 100% guilty of this, especially when I was in college, of just in programming classes, just slapping some crap from Stack Overflow in a thing. It got me through the class, but I look back at it now and I'm like, well, that was just a huge waste of my money.
It ended up hurting you more
I learned
long
nothing.
If that was your goal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if my goal was to become a programmer and I spent the entire time, which, no offense, Brian, a lot of programming is looking up people's solutions on Stack Overflow and copying them. But in terms of learning the fundamentals and all that stuff, I do kind of regret that now. I mean, at the time it was like, screw it, I really don't even want to be here. But so you can do that. I'm sure you could AI your way through college almost exclusively, but then you're going to graduate and be completely unemployable.
And need something that's not cookie cutter, and then you're stuck.
Yeah, then you're screwed. Yeah, big time.
Yep. And I think that this is where they're going to really have to adapt how schools work. I think this is what it's really going to come down to is you can't do homework anymore because when you can read the problem, no matter how complicated you make it to AI, and it will give you the answer, how do you then do homework where kids can't just cheat in every which way? You're going to have it to where the kids are doing school in school. They're having courses that are interactive, that you're answering on the fly, that they don't have access to take something home or to look something up. This is going to have to adapt so that kids actually learn. This is where the school needs to figure this out.
Some kid will be in his class with this Apple Pro Vision on, it listening to everything that's going on. And well, I will say this.
Seeing the answers on the fly as they go.
Yeah, exactly. I'll say this before we get out of here. Homework, the traditional concept of homework has been proven to be very ineffective for generations. But what school is, I hope, hopefully going back to is teaching you how to learn, how to think, like actually be able to critically think in those things. Everything else will just kind of
rather than memorizing answers.
Correct.
That seems like what it's turned into.
Homework. That's all homework teaches you is to how to memorize answers.
Go memorize this so that when we put the paper in front of you, you can repeat it back. That's not understanding and learning. And that's the problem.
But that's how
they've got to teach you how to truly understand it. Yeah. And I think that the whole system is messed up. We're going to be homeschooling our kids this coming year, and it's using a curriculum where you can't cheat at it. It's you have to actually understand it. It's not if you get the answer wrong, just keep moving on. They have to understand it and pass the tests at the end.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of how I did college, which was much more effective in the style. And I just think that that's what all these schools are going to have to do because the grades of classes across the country have been plummeting. There's areas where students that there's nobody who passes the minimum standards in whole counties, across states. And I think that they're going to have to figure out, because COVID's really thrown a loop in these changes that they made to school, and the kids' abilities to focus and learn has gone downhill.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be where not just computer situations, but schools need to step up to the plate. And I don't feel like they're doing that. Like their focus is so far off the rails at the moment that I don't see these fixes happening soon. And that's why so many people are sending their kids to private schools and homeschooling now.
No question.
Getting away from that. So,
all right. Well,
if you want,
cool. Great conversation, Brian. I wasn't expecting that. I thought that was a good one. If you guys have any comments on all that stuff, throw it in our Discord. Shoot us an email, contact@infectionpodcast.com. Love to hear from you guys, your thoughts on all that.
Yep. Hey, and if you want to find me, you can get me at Boise Computer on X, or if you want to go to one of the other services at Boise or at Brian Aldridge. If you want to find me at Boise or at biteoftech.com, you can do that for my blog. Got ways to contact me on there. Or if you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, just go to the upper right-hand side. You can join our server on Discord. It's a good place to play on our 11 ARC servers that we have running. Or if you want to maybe submit some show news links, just jump into that channel, post links in there. We'll review those before the live show starts. And maybe you want to direct some of the topics that we discuss, or there's something on AI that you want to give input on. That's the perfect place to do it. If you want to watch the live show, you can do that through Twitch or YouTube, or after the fact, you can watch the upload on Rumble. If you want to listen to it, after the fact, we upload it to a lot of different platforms and devices. And so pick whatever one's most convenient. If you are listening to it, that means that you can go and get onto our particular episode show notes and follow the different links for things that we discussed during that show. There's a video and audio player built into that page. And maybe there's a video or source material that we referenced, but didn't go into in a huge amount of detail. You can go find those all on that page. If you want to support us, there's a menu option up top, or you can go to infection.podcast.com/support.
As I look at last week's show notes, I did not have a chance to play the Roblox Twister game yet. And I'm doing some traveling in the next couple weeks, so I don't know. But I will. I will get into that, I promise. Brian, thanks as always, my man. Great conversation. We'll chat with you next week.
Talk to you soon.
Alrighty, folks. Well, let's see. You can check me out daily, as I mentioned earlier. That's what I do. My day gig is a host of Wilmington's Morning News here across southeastern North Carolina. Cover a lot of statewide and national political stuff. You can check that out at nickcraig.com or search Wilmington's Morning News in your favorite podcast app. As Brian mentioned, if you want to check out any of our show notes or get some links to our various social media profiles, you can do all of that on our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.